Hey everyone. Welcome to Out of the Reeds with me, your host, Natasha Percagelo. And I wanted to start off today's session with, of course, I like to get into the reads with something that has to do with some kind of spiritual connotation or some kind of interesting thing that I'm bringing to the table, just because, hey, that's me, guys. I love all the woo, and I wouldn't even necessarily call it woo, but I just love it all. So let's get into it with this deck. Recently pulled from this deck earlier this week on Pull a Read with Me Monday. But the reason being is that our guest on the show today, Tatiana Gonzalez, her and I are very much steeped in this, and we go back and forth, her being one of my best friends. So she would definitely appreciate me highlighting the divine feminine. So I figured in honor of Tatiana, let's do it. Let's pull a read, okay, for our show today. And this divine feminine deck has to do with female archetypes, not only just female archetypes, but goddesses and women throughout history. So let's get into it and see who we get today. Ta-da! Okay, sometimes one falls out, doesn't always happen, doesn't mean there's anything wrong if it doesn't happen. So I'm going to pull from the top of the deck here. Ooh, Parvati, the goddess of devotion. Let me show you what she looks like here. Goddess of devotion. I am a love that doesn't leave. When I commit to love, my soul evolves. I think that's really fitting, especially for Tatiana. You'll see, in our interview, she is someone who has so much of this within her soul. She gives so much of herself to her family, to her friends. She's always shown up. She's going to show up for you. She's that type of person. So this one's for you, Tatiana. This is the message for you today. And yeah, guys, I'm super excited to do this show. She is a friend of mine that I've known, like I said, for 20 plus years. You'll hear more about that as we go on. And, she's just a wonderful person. And I'm glad to have the ability to share her story because it is a unique one. Her experience has been pretty unique with her motherhood and her journey in her marriage. So let's get into the reads with Tatiana. Hey, everybody. So we have our guest today, Tatiana Gonzalez. She's been a longtime friend of mine. I'd love to hear from you, Tati, our story.
Been a long time. It's been like 20 years. We met because I moved to Florida from Puerto Rico around 15, and my mom signed me up for ballroom dance lessons because I was so depressed. Big change. It was a hard one. And so Natasha is the daughter of the owner of the dance studio. So, I was like, oh my gosh, she looks fun. She looks cool. I'm going to befriend her. And I did. And then we moved in together, and here we are 20 years later, and
Yeah,
now we're recording a podcast together.
I know. It's crazy to think that. Hey, everyone. As maybe some of you saw before in some of my social media stuff, I used to be a ballroom dancer, and that's what my family does. So she was a professional ballroom dancer. I did not take my career professionally. She did. And it was amazing. She was a fantastic rhythm dancer. So you're probably like, what is rhythm? What is. Hey everyone, it's me interrupting me to bring this to you. If you are currently watching, then no worries. You're about to see some amazing ballroom dancing by Tatiana. She's going to dance a Roomba with Diego. However, if you are listening on Spotify or any other place where you listen to your podcast, you are just going to end up hearing a lot of cool music. So if you're so inclined, I would head over to YouTube or anywhere where you can actually watch and see some amazing dancing.
Me, there's something pretty. When the sun say this day is arbitrary. We suggest you to us, yes, baby, not to baby, I love. I don't need those things. I don't need no ring. I don't need anything. Maybe I feel happy, I'm so free. Don't me.
Okay, so just a quick breakdown. Ballroom dancing. There are four main styles in ballroom dancing. You have the Latin style, the rhythm style, smooth, and then classical ballroom. So Tatiana danced and competed in rhythm, which comprised five dances: rumba, cha-cha, bolero, swing, and mambo. So I'm so happy to have you on the show. And our episode being about marriage today, you have a very unique situation and a very unique life now that you're no longer in dance. You're again mother of two. Your older son Lorenzo is 7, and your younger daughter, Isabella, is 4. So I'll leave it there for now from my explanation, but why don't you share with everybody, why your situation and why your marriage and motherhood experience is so unique?
Well, I think there's different facets to it. I am a military spouse. My husband is currently deployed, has been gone for about 10 months, and this is the fourth time I do this.
Mhm.
The first time we weren't married yet, but it was kind of like a trial run to see if we really wanted to go at it and like do the whole thing, marriage and babies. We knew we loved each other, but it's a different type of commitment when you're committing to being married to somebody that's not necessarily always going to be around.
Yeah,
Now, you don't get to pick where you're going to live.
right.
You don't typically have family around, which we don't, for help. So a lot of it was committing to being married, yes, but also doing a big chunk of life on my own
Mhm.
with the future children that we wanted to have at that point.
Right.
And so that's one facet of it. The other is that I have an autistic son, my son Lorenzo. He's 7 years old and he's on the spectrum. He was diagnosed at the age of 4,
Mhm.
but looking back at it, like obviously he was always autistic. I just didn't know anything about autism.
Right, right, right.
He didn't change. I needed to.
Mhm.
And he got diagnosed at 4, but I started therapies with him at 2.
Mhm.
And that was another big thing. My husband left for deployment when he was like 11 months old.
Okay.
And he did 2 back-to-back deployments. And while he was gone, we went from having, you know, an infant to a toddler that takes speech therapy.
Right,
And now
right.
there's like a routine. And mind you, all of this was happening during COVID.
Yes, yes, that's a
So
whole experience in and itself.
that was a whole
Yeah.
experience, but that was a collective experience, not just for me.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, there's different facets to it. There's the military life, military spouse, and then you add on top of that that you have a child with a disability. So that's like
Mhm.
another umbrella, I guess. And then we've also had our issues with extended family.
Hey, everybody, me again. Wanted to interject here as Natasha, the therapist, and share with you a little bit about why Tatiana's experience is so challenging. So, not only is she a military spouse, but all of her support system lives in Puerto Rico. She's the only member of her family that currently, her nuclear family, that lives in the United States. And there's no familial support. Her husband is deployed and the mother of a child who's on the spectrum. So, all of these factors heavily weigh against her marriage, right? These are stressor points that would put a lot of pressure on a marriage. However, we'll see how she tends to handle that with grace. So let's continue.
So
Right.
that's, which I think is also another thing that couples commonly struggle with after getting married.
Sure.
It's hard to find the dynamic,
The balance.
the balance, and yeah, it was a different dynamic and we were all stepping into new roles.
Hmm.
The extended family, me, I was a military spouse now
Right.
with a child that I didn't know. had a disability at that time, but I could tell that I was a little bit more tired than all my friends.
There was something different.
There is something
Something.
different because everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, by this day, she'll just sleep through the night." And I was
Right.
like, I'm still waking up every 2 to 4 hours." Now I
Mhm.
know that bad sleep essentially is an early sign of, what could be autism.
Mhm. Hey, so just wanted to highlight here that when Tatiana is talking about her son Lorenzo and her journey through discovering his diagnosis of autism, throughout her husband's deployment, Tatiana and I have always gone back and forth with supporting one another through voice memos, having conversations that weave into our daily lives as mothers. But this is how we've been able to support one another, and she's afforded me a lot of help with understanding my older son, who's only a year older than her oldest, Lorenzo. So it's allowed for me to gain a lot of perspective and see some of the things that she's gone through and to have a sounding board and really see what she's been doing. She's doing so much activation work and activation? Activist. Jeez, wow. Activist work. So just wanted to highlight that.
Very grateful that he's a phenomenal sleeper now, but that's taken a lot of work to get to
Right,
this point.
right.
So yeah, there's different facets. For me, it's a very specific because you have military spouse, you have autism mom, as people
Mhm.
like to call it, and then there's also the, I guess, typical marriage challenges and like finding everybody's new role
Right,
in the
in
extended
life.
family and in life, and everybody kind of stepping into their new role, new place.
How was like, for you, what was probably one of the hardest conversations you had to have with Kyle, your husband? I mean, outside of the fact that, first of all, you're coming into life from the dance world, right? So
Yeah.
that's a complete shift. He's not in that world, but you're making that big shift to come from that life into married life. And then on top of that, I mean, that's one thing, but then with your motherhood and realizing that Lorenzo was on the spectrum and after a deployment and all these things, how was that? Like, what conversations have been like the hardest for you and Kyle?
Well, it's not one conversation.
Right.
It's a lot of conversations about the same topics. I mean,
Right.
for us, for a while, because he did back to back deployments the first 2 years of my son's
Mhm.
life. And so he was not home enough for us to kind of like resolve all of these things.
Mhm.
So I very much went into help my kid.
Right.
I need to, if I can't help our marriage, then I need to help our son.
Mhm.
And obviously I kept him in the loop of what was happening, but he's at war.
Right. Right.
He's got other things that he needs to be worried about. He needs to make sure he's safe. He needs to make sure that the people he works with, his team is safe.
Mhm.
He's got other responsibilities at that moment. So part of being a military spouse is that it's my job to kind of take care of everything. And
Right.
it was always a hard line between these are decisions that we should be making together, but you're also not well informed and educated in any capacity because you're not around to be able to see, and you don't even have enough dependable Wi-Fi to research what I want you to research. You know
Right,
what I
right.
mean?
Like, even the bare minimum is just not
It's like
accessible.
bare minimum. My husband gets deployed on carriers, so
Mhm.
we don't FaceTime every day. We
Mhm.
don't I go days without hearing from him sometimes. Right
Yeah,
now, I
that's
haven't heard
so
from
hard.
him in over 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so there's no conversation, there's more like check-ins.
Mhm.
We're good, we're healthy, emails, and
Mhm.
every once in a while we get a phone call when they hit a port, but overall there's no constant communication. So
Right.
I can't I've never been able to get into the details of everything.
Hey, guys, just wanted to take the time to say, I can't imagine, like, as a mom of 2, I literally can't imagine my husband being away, or my partner, or whoever I was with. I cannot imagine doing the whole thing alone with no family around. And I know that that's so much of our current existence today. A lot of families are separated, and move away from one another, but oh my gosh, I just I as someone who's, like, all about the tribe, I can only imagine how hard it has been, for any person who's in a similar situation to Tatiana, and also for her herself, how hard it is to do all the things on your own. It's really tough, for all the single moms, single parents, um, you know, I know that it's a different flavor when there is someone who's not been there, and, the whole, "Well, you just have yourself to rely on, so whatever." But no, that's a hard job regardless. Every situation has its own different, elements that they're bringing to the table, so kudos and shout out to all of the single parents, parents doing it in the military, parents, and any kind of different kind of living or family setup. I see you. It's a hard job, guys. It's a hard job.
Once he returns home, my son is a year old, a year and
Mhm.
a half. We are in the beginning stages of the pandemic at that point,
Yeah.
and I was like, he's not really speaking yet, and
Mhm.
I'm in the process of getting him evaluated for services or speech therapy, but I didn't quite understand what I was doing myself. I was just kind of following a checklist
Right, right.
of what I was recommended to do from a pediatrician and a friend and so on. But then he left again. He was home for 4 months and then he left again for another deployment.
Mhm.
So by the time he came back and he was home for 3 years straight, the conversation that I had with him was, okay, you're home. You're going to be home on shore duty. You're home for 3 years, so you can't go anywhere, no deployments.
Mhm.
This was also the first time we've ever had that since we met,
Wow, okay.
even dating. We did
Yeah.
long distance for 3 years. And then I moved in with him. We got married and he got deployed shortly after,
Right away. Wow, wow.
within the first year
Yeah,
or
yeah.
so, So
Mhm.
the first couple of years of marriage, I was alone quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
That must be
so
hard just in and of itself, being alone, for so long and a newlywed, so to speak.
yeah. But, it kinda comes with the territory, so you kind of get your mindset into that space, and
Yeah.
you're just like, "This is it, I made this choice, and so I'm
True.
gonna figure it out." I'm not one to complain. I'll cry for a minute, and then I'm like, "Alright, back to
Right.
normal, snap back into it." But
Yeah.
he he comes home, and the conversation was, "Listen, while you have been gone, I've been having these things come up. Um,
Mhm.
your side of the family has been having a boundary issue. Like
Mhm.
I say this is what I want for our child. I check in with you, you agree with me, and then a third party comes and interferes and all of a sudden
Things
we're supposed
change.
to be changing our minds and our plan
Got it.
because a third party that's really involved
Mhm.
thinks we should do things differently." And in my
Right.
opinion, it's like grandparents, of course, they should be involved, but also they should know their place.
Mhm.
I've never been one to have a set of rules for one side and a set of rules for the other. I'm very
Right.
fair.
Across the board.
Across the board, everybody has the same rules in my life. These are my boundaries, and where
Mhm.
you stand depends on where you're going to go.
Right, right. Yeah. Obviously, when someone crosses our boundaries, it really does shift the energy from us feeling like we can work with someone and things feeling open to things feeling shut down. And therapeutically, as a therapist, setting up good boundaries shows someone where you are and aren't willing to go. Kids need them, right? They push the boundaries because they're testing, they're trying to figure out their way and their place in life. So, anytime we can set up good boundaries, that allows us to really have um, the space energetically feel clean and clear. And emotionally, things can also feel like, okay, I'm respected and people take me seriously, and everyone can hopefully harmoniously get along better.
How you react to those boundaries depends on where you're going to stand on that line. So we had
Hmm.
those things to figure out. I was in the middle of trying to figure out why my son felt different, you
Hmm.
know? And also, I was further into the stage of acceptance of he's probably a little different. And it never bothered me that he was different. Like it did a little bit because it's like a human nature
Sure, sure.
thing, but not enough for me to be like, God, no, no.
Now what do I
Let's
do? Yeah,
It was more like, okay, so how do I help him not be uncomfortable was
right.
more of my concern. I don't want
Yeah.
him to struggle through his entire life,
Mhm.
you know? And so there was that. I was always a step ahead and
A
accept
proactive
beca-
response,
and
yeah.
proactive response because I was here every day.
Right, right, you
He
were
was
seeing it,
always
boots on the
I was
ground for
seeing it.
you.
Yeah. Boots
Yeah,
on the ground for me all the time. For him, he just kinda got, like, snippets, and also
mhm,
it was our first child.
right,
I worked a lot with children before, so I had a little bit of an idea,
mhm,
but he had no idea, I don't think he even
yeah,
changed the diaper
yeah.
before before
That's right.
having our kid.
That's right, I forgot, that, even I don't think we weren't living together at the time, but it was when I moved back here. I forgot that you were nannying, so you were watching kids and you were working with, like, kids in schools, subbing and doing dance team
Yeah,
and stuff. So you did, yeah, you had a lot more exposure to child behavior than
yeah,
child did.
yeah, I mean, at one point, I was like in one day, I would go from taking care of a newborn, a toddler, to working with elementary school age kids and teaching them dance, all
Right,
in the
right,
same day.
right.
So, it was never quite my intention, but I always just ended up working with kids. I do well with children,
Mhm.
I think, because children are so honest,
Yes.
you
As are
know,
you.
as am I. Like, if you have a question, like, I will give you the answer and pray that I don't get canceled for it, you know?
Well, we're all about honest conversations here. I hope that's not the plan. It's just delivering the information, in the truthful way, and you do
In the
that.
truthful way. My
Yeah.
delivery has gotten better with age, I will say
Yes.
that, you
Yeah.
know? More compassion nowadays.
So go
Yes.
ahead.
No, then after it was that, and then on top of just the regular military spouse struggles, there's I can't remember the percentage, but a very high percentage of military marriages end in divorce, as
Right.
we all know. Marriages that have a child with a disability end up in divorce. So you have those two together. And it's also a very high number when you have, challenges with in-laws and things like that that also end up and trickles down into your marriage. So
Right.
for us, I was like, we have 3 years. And my message to him was direct and clear was we have 3 years to figure out if we're gonna actually end up together for the rest of our lives,
I
like
mean,
we
that
planned.
you're working against a lot of odds in your relationship, your marriage, obviously
Mhm.
with those determining factors. But was there a time and maybe a conversation, or maybe it's not even just like you said, maybe not one conversation, but what do you feel the two of you, where did you end up, or maybe just your experience with feeling resentment, in your marriage, and like what was the crux of that for you, and how did you work through that?
So for me personally, I feel like he had this idea from a movie coming into marriage,
Okay.
and you know, I guess his parents separated when he was young, so it was a different. My parents are still married today, but I have seen them.
Mhm.
I have seen them in their lows and their highs, and I've seen them through all the stages. I've had a very clear picture that it wasn't going to be easy, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
especially now having more than what I originally planned for,
Right.
But I always knew that I needed to feel safe.
Mhm.
I needed to feel safe in my marriage. And like, no matter what happened, it was always going to be us two. And for me, it was very important for us to be on the same page about how we dealt with the in laws. It's
Okay.
like, it's not, it's like, sure, their input, it matters because they're family, but also does it if it goes against what we want to do or
Mhm.
what we know is best for our child? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
none of them live near. None of them are, like, involved in our day-to-day life. So,
Mhm.
like, I'm not gonna go against my gut and what I know
Right, to
will
be
be
true.
good for my child to just fit into whatever idea you thought my child was going to be.
Mhm.
My child is not determined to be this specific thing because he's a boy, because he's this, because he's that. He's his own person, and I'm only
Mhm.
speaking on my son because at this point we didn't have my daughter.
Right.
but that's a whole nother that's a that's a whole nother experience because
Yeah,
each kid is different and
for sure.
you can't like what I've learned from my son has not really prepared me for my daughter in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they're different people. Every child is different and different challenges arise with each one and how you
Mhm.
as a mom are shaped differently from each one.
Oh my God, yes. My daughter is getting the more patient version,
Right.
you know, because my son being autistic, it required me to make a choice. Like, am I going to traumatize him or am I going to like educate myself?
Right. And
Because
show
that's
up
really all
differently.
it is. Yes.
100%.
And one of the things that's like really hard for me now where I am is watching other parents because we all go through our stage of denial.
Yeah, and we all have our own journey, right? You know, we
Hmm.
arrive to things at different stages and different moments in our lives. So, you know, for where you were arriving and you chose the path of, like you said, I could either go the traumatizing route because like, you know, I'm, you know, completely up to here and my partner's not here with me. He's
Hmm.
deployed and you know, so you making that choice of I can go this route or I'm going to go the other, you know, down the other road and I'm going to educate myself. You know, you being at that stage in your journey, you know, is looks probably totally different to somebody else who might be experiencing some similarities, but in a very different way because they're a different person.
Well, and also, I probably hit my limit a lot faster because I was stuck inside a
Sure.
house during
So
a
many things that
pandemic
were different.
without
Yeah,
a husband or any other adult that could actually relieve me.
exactly.
I couldn't go to like a drop in, a daycare. I had nothing. It was just
Mhm.
me and my kid with a bad sleep schedule, you
Mhm.
know? So
Mhm.
I think I got to that point of like, oh my God, I'm going
Sooner.
to crack way quicker
Mhm.
than other people typically probably do,
Right, right. Just
you
because of your
know?
circumstances and your experience with your marriage.
And for me, my motherhood journey from the beginning has been really looking back at it now has been I'm not doing things the way most people do it at all, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure, which is why I wanted to interview you because your take is so unique and so different on multiple levels, you know, coming out of something that was at least how I see it, right? And having lived with you, coming out of a world that was glamour and art and like, you know, has its own challenges, and then coming into a lifestyle that's more, you know, traditional, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, getting married and like
I
having
am such a
kids and
traditional wife now. I
I
never
know you
expected that for
are. It's so
myself.
completely like, you know, if everybody had known Tatiana before, you'd be like, "Really? Is this is the trajectory she went on?"
This
You
is
know, and
what you're doing
sometimes
right now, lady?
right, and sometimes people from the dance world that I still know or meet up with are still like, "Oh, wow." Like, you know, like, "Oh, okay." You know, but I think that's what makes your story so interesting is that, you know, there's people who like, you know, think it's gonna be all like glam and glitz and, "Oh, that's how we would always want that." You'd never wanna leave that, but you chose a route that really has shaped you and I think created you into who you were meant to be. And so my question
Mhm.
to you now is, you know, what do you feel like you've learned about love and partnership that either eh, that you've learned along the way and that you would have said to your younger self?
Okay, patience, very important.
Right.
Because I always had more patience with children because I was always in the okay, they're not developmentally there yet.
Right.
You know, they're beautiful, they're wonderful, they're funny, they're annoying sometimes. But like they're developmentally where they're supposed to be.
Right.
You know, even if some kids were more or others, like I always knew that you're still a kid, you're still learning, but you're still human.
Mhm.
But I've always had this understanding before kids of like, you're an adult, you should know better.
Right, the expectation that because you're grown, you
You
should
should know
be
better.
right,
But now, as an adult, a mother, now I'm like, age doesn't determine anything. It's like
correct.
how you choose to live your life,
Right,
what you do with your time. If
right,
you're always involved in like, I mean, obviously take care of yourself, put some lipstick on if it makes you feel better, go to the gym, do the things that make you feel good.
right.
But it's like the why you do it.
Mhm.
It's very important because I did all those things and it ended up in a lot of ways being more harmful for me. And that's why I left the dance world. I was like, this doesn't feel good anymore. you know?
Mhm.
I don't have the joy I used to have.
Mhm.
And I was like, and I feel so much joy when I'm with my boyfriend. Why don't I nurture that?
Right,
You
right.
know?
Mhm.
And so patience is the first thing because I've required a lot of patience because my job as a military spouse is to wait.
Yeah, yes.
I do a
You're
lot of waiting,
literally doing that right now.
waiting for news, waiting for you alive? Are you well?
Right.
Did you eat?
Waiting
Just a
for you to
lot of
come back and give
waiting.
me a break.
Like my son says, we're just waiting for daddy to come home and let mommy sleep in so he can feed us.
Aw.
And I'm just
Yeah.
like, yes, yes, that's what we're doing in a nutshell. So
Yeah.
a lot of patience because a lot of waiting. Also, waiting in the sense of I'm waiting. I've waited a lot for him to catch up to the reality of our life because again, nobody plans to have an autistic son.
Sure,
I
sure.
feel like now an advice I would give my younger self is when you have kids, be prepared to have the kid you're going to have.
Right. Don't
Don't
have
have
an
a kid with
expectation.
expectation.
Yes.
I feel
Yeah.
like I didn't think I had an expectation, but I also didn't know anything about autism.
Sure.
So I didn't expect it to be a thing because even though now I understand that there are undiagnosed people in my life that came before me
Mhm.
that are probably autistic because now I understand it and I see it and I'm just like, duh, you know?
Of
Now
course.
it's like, hello, yes, I see it. But before that, I didn't. And so it wasn't anything that was in my realm of a possibility,
Right,
you
right.
know? So, like, just be prepared to have a kid and be prepared for that kid to be whatever they're going to be. Don't
Yeah.
have expectations to what you want your kid to be.
Yeah.
So, this is the funniest thing. I'm kind of bouncing around. But my husband, when we got married, he said, his spouse said something about like protecting me from all evil.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize how much I needed that
Right.
because my protecting me from all evil and it stuck with me because I'm like, oh my God, that is what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
I want a feeling of safety. So like he knew what I wanted,
Mhm.
but evil comes in different packaging.
Sure.
Evil doesn't come like it does in movies. And evil
The
just
bad
does
guy.
it's not like the bad guy. Evil
Yeah.
can be anything that's negatively disrupting your
Right.
life. It could be water if it comes in a tsunami, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right. For sure, for sure.
So it can be anything or anyone. So for us, the hard part was that the thing that he needed to keep me safe from was somebody that was close, people that were close to him, you know?
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
because they were necessarily evil, more because of like, we needed to be in more of a united front.
Right, right. So it really shaped your whole relationship, and
The
it
whole
wasn't
thing.
exactly. It wasn't just about I guess that's also the expectations, like you had said,
Hmm.
not having a preconceived notion of what things are going to look like.
Exactly.
Know that it's subject to change. It doesn't always come the way you think it's going to come, whether that's your kids, whether that's your relationship, whatever it might be.
Yeah, like you can have an idea and you can have hopes and you can have dreams of what you want your life and your marriage to look like, but
Mhm.
you can't you can't set in stone anything. And like so the only thing that you can depend on is feeling safe.
Right.
And every child should feel safe with their parents and every wife, every husband, every spouse should feel safe with their person. And this comes even in just dating in
Yeah.
general.
Exactly. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing with me and with everybody your take on your experience with motherhood, your journey with marriage and life and like what things have looked like now versus what they looked like
Mhm.
for you before. I really appreciate it. You're one of my best friends, so thanks for taking the time to come and do this.
This was fun. I enjoyed myself.
Thanks. Hey everyone. As always, thanks for stepping into the reads with us today. We can't wait to share the next episode with you. But until then, please, please, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as anywhere that you catch the podcast, whether that be Spotify or Apple, Buzzsprout. Please feel free to like, comment, leave anything behind. We love to interact with you. You can also follow us on Instagram as well as on TikTok. And yeah, just drop a line and say hi. And thanks for joining us on Out of the Reads.